Today is September 2nd, 2020, regarding the hyper-dilution of the U.S. dollar by the Federal Reserve on their way to get China, which will cause lack of money in the United States and China, so neither will be able to import, which will bring economic depression to the rest of the world, relying on trade with the two greatest trade partners by volume. So I've been speaking about this since November 2017 and estimated it would be 2022 to 2027 when this would be evident on the streets. And now we're seeing many articles about the dilution of the U.S. dollar, the concern by other countries that this is going on, and the Federal Reserve saying they have a bottomless pit of funds that they can help the U.S. out with this coronavirus paranoia, et cetera, so on and so forth. And I've said that, plans recommended to my friends to leave the country and think about it. And now is the time to begin to go to your designated country, preferably one that does not rely heavily on trade exporting to China or the United States, preferably has their own agriculture, and also that the United States will virtually never recover from this, in your lifetime, and probably will never regain the hegemony and preeminence that it experiences in the world today at all. The European governments are already looking at China to replace the United States, and also to replace the U.S. dollar as the favored world currency reserve, and and so it's going on like this, and to see that your way that you make money is independent of the U.S. dollar in some way, and also doesn't rely on the U.S. economy or the tourism by China or the United States in the country you're going to. Again, now is the time, I've mentioned before, to think about the country. Now's the time to go to that country before emigration from the United States reaches the proportions that it has in Venezuela, where they've had 4 million fleeing the country. That was a year ago, since 2016. And the inflation rate there is estimated maybe 10 million% this year. It was 1 million% last year. And it's going to be worse in the United States. So this is, unless you can go to live near the border, like in Canada, near the border of Canada, not in the northeast United States because it gets snowbound and very difficult to get food and medicine in the winter, snowy months. But in the Pacific Northwest, where it's pretty clear all the time, or in the southern with Mexico, where you can go be within 30 minutes of the border and go there for the things that will be lacking in the United States. The four major things in hyperinflation are food, medicine, jobs, and personal safety. So being in a big city is not any good at all. If one's going to stay in the United States, to be near the border, not in a big city, and have a job or income whereby it's independent of the U.S. dollar and also the U.S. economy. Some international source or some type of business where you can maintain an income. And don't expect to count on anything from the United States for quite some time. All the countries before, like Zimbabwe, then Argentina, and Venezuela, just a couple of those have never recovered. And that's the way hyperinflation is, to the extent. And because the United States is already so broke. The government, 30 trillion in debt, and everybody here has got no savings, and and hyperinflation will drive everybody's money. I mean, the hyper devaluation, dilution will drive everybody's value, their purchasing power of their funds to almost zero. For this country to recover is, decades and decades and decades. And as a culture, the United States really has nothing to leave the world as a legacy. China, 5,000 some years, a legacy of culture and anything and everything. And, Ireland, years of the tribal and clans, and Scotland, and, Europe, the lore and history of that, and from Rome and Greece and the Middle East, the founding of where the site of all the great religions, and, much culture. But in the United States, there was culture here. The people who were here had culture. The Aztecs, the American various tribes who were here. There was culture, but it's been wiped out. And replaced with a flash in the pan with high technology and now fast living, and I don't know what's going to be any lasting about it. That will be recognizable. The language won't. Because that comes from, it's basically England, and it's it's not something to count on the United States anymore. And so pick a country, go there before emigration from the United States reaches the proportions that it will, as it does with countries where people have the wherewithal to leave, and borders get closed. There may be refugee camps in Canada and Mexico, which is usual for, like, Venezuela has Uruguay and Colombia refugee camps. Huge refugee camps around there. And so don't be one of those, because it won't be good living in a refugee camp, where you won't have any money. That's for starters. So anyway, now's the time to get your visa, passport in order, make moving plans, find a way to make a living. That you should be doing that within the next 6 months, that you should be leaving within the next 6 months probably. Certainly no longer than 12 months, because the rate of the acceleration by the Federal Reserve of what they're doing with using their monopolistic power to print the U.S. dollar and going into the bond market, where the American citizen and the Congress doesn't even vote on it. The stimulus package that can be voted on, but it's gone into the trillions, and that's diluting the U.S. dollar ostensibly to support the bond market, etc. It's really just the upshot is another 6 trillion there or something. Whatever, I can't remember. I don't even know at this point if anybody knows what they're doing, but. I don't know why Congress gave it. Why are we not managing our own currency, and we gave it to a private corporation from Interbank, who we know does this kind of thing, Well, anyway, so that's kind of it. This is just a wake-up call that the time has come to get moving. It's been 3 years now, and about planning and talking and delineating variables, and now you see they're coming to fruition. The U.S. dollar is getting extremely devalued. In fact, it's hitting, just this week, it was hitting new 2-year lows against the other major currencies, the Swiss franc, the British pound, I believe the euro, and New Zealand. And so, this is what is beginning of the, because when other countries see the value of their U.S. treasuries going down, they're going to put them on the market just to save their own governments. And when that happens, the devaluation of the U.S. dollar is going to go much faster and faster, and that will, begin to create a firestorm that nobody will be able to get us out of. And so it'd be nice if somebody could stop the Federal Reserve. I guess it's not going to happen. But anyway, I tried. Well, I guess we're going to get scattered to the winds of time. We'll touch down later in another place, and maybe by email we'll keep touch.
Well, it's interesting to note that if you take out a dollar bill, there are a lot of religions in this world, and money is probably the most widely adhered to, followed. If you take a U.S. dollar bill out and you look at it, it looks mighty official. However, it's just a graphic design by a graphic artist, and it was done at the behest of the Federal Reserve Corporation, private corporation. And so it would look real, and they're often called the central bank of the United States, but they're not. They're not a bank. They simply have the right, Congress gave them, I don't know why, but twisted their arm, I guess, and to print the U.S. dollar and control our interest rates to our detriment. Stock market crash of 29, the real estate crash of 2008, and the coming problems now. The interest rates they've gotten at zero, and the stock market is way out of hand. Yes, the U.S. dollar is just a promo item to promote the officialness of the Federal Reserve, and that's why they named it the Federal Reserve. So it would sound like a real thing. They've got no reserves, of course. They print the U.S. dollar in order to purchase things, and the total U.S. government debt of July 2020 is around $27 trillion. Now, the stimulus package was $3 trillion, and so how many trillions they're putting into the bond market and financial markets at this point, I don't know that anybody knows, or it doesn't look like anybody can vote on that even. But suppose they put a couple of trillion in there, and we got $3 trillion in stimulus package and some other expenditures, and you might have around maybe $6 trillion now, dilution of the U.S. dollar on top of the only 27 million. That's almost diluting it by 25% of its present rate. So this is the extreme conditions that the Federal Reserve is putting the U.S. dollar on. And, of course, the foreign governments aren't going to tolerate this dilution of their Federal Reserve holdings, and they're going to come out into the market and greatly cause problems for everybody who holds U.S. dollars. And if you see your dollar bill, if it was printed in 1972, when the Federal Reserve convinced Nixon to adopt a fiat currency, which always ends in hyperinflation, as is known, except for the Swiss, interestingly enough, since 1750s. And since then, it's gone downhill. Now, it's only worth about 20 cents in the dollar now since 1972. The exchange rate with the Swiss franc was about 4.3 to the dollar in 72, and now it's like 0.8 or 0.9, and you can see the extreme devaluation that has happened to the U.S. dollar. And why is the Federal Reserve Corporation doing this? It's not in the best interest of our country, and this is what happens when you let somebody else, a for-profit corporation, regulate your currency. And we should regulate our own currency in this nation.